Okay, I just want to establish that this video is not a part of the What Happened series that we're doing. You know, the recent series we have done where we take a look at NBC draft comparisons that have been done in the past and we take a look at where those comparisons are today. This is not one of those. This is instead a more overarching look on a player that was a Montreal Canadien, but is no longer. Before we expose, analyze, and critique this guy's game, I gotta give a very big thank you to Alexander Romanov for everything this guy did as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. The big hits, the excitement, the hopes and the dreams, and the potential future this player had with the team. Thank you so much for your service with the Montreal Canadiens, Alexander Romanov, and thank you for your sacrifice, as this player was traded from the Montreal Canadiens over to the New York Islanders in a trade that eventually became a second trade. It was kind of a three-way trade, but not really. It was just Montreal making two separate trades at the same time, one with the Islanders and then one with the Chicago Blackhawks. If you need to catch up to speed here, the Montreal Canadiens traded Alexander Romanov as well as their 2022 fourth-round pick, which was 98th overall, to the New York Islanders in exchange for the 13th overall pick. Now, the Habs did not use that 13th overall pick. Instead, they traded that, as well as their 2022 third, the 66th overall pick, to the Chicago Blackhawks in order to get the signing rights to one Kirby Dach. You could see the reaction video on the channel where I kind of freaked out, and, you know, I can scream pretty loudly when I get excited about things, and that's exactly what happened there. The microphone, sorry, it kind of blew past your eardrums, so volume warning to anybody who is watching that video in retrospect, but either way, Kirby Dach was sent over to the Montreal Canadiens. It makes a little bit more sense now why they did not take Shane Wright at first overall, but that's a video for another day. I wanted to focus on the defenseman Romanov, who went over to New York, and why exactly it was the Montreal Canadiens probably felt it was appropriate to do this type of move. So, if you take a look at Alexander Romanov and the profile that this guy has, Alexander Romanov is a 22-year-old defenseman, 6 feet 207 as a left-handed guy, who is indeed an RFA right now. He needs a contract extension. He'll likely get that with the Islanders. He was drafted in the second round of the 2018 NHL Draft, and he was a pretty good steal of a draft pick very early on after that draft season. You see, back in 2017-2018, he was only playing in the Russian Junior League, the MHL, where he had 14 points in 37 games played and 37 penalty minutes as well. He didn't have the flashiest profile out there, but he still was an internationally successful defenseman that made himself known well enough to get drafted in this second round. The next season, though, Alexander Romanov showed off pretty quickly that there was a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to his player profile. For one, he suited up in the KHL for a full season for CSKA Moscow, getting 4 points in 43 games. Now, the point production kind of sucks, but who cares? This is an 18-year-old guy who is playing a full-time, shutdown role in one of the best teams in the entire KHL. That in itself, pretty valuable. He also had the World Junior Showcase he had, where he had 8 points in 7 games played, 1 goal, 7 assists for Team Russia, and again, as an 18-year-old, a guy who was technically underage, playing with 19, 20-year-olds at the World Juniors, he was an absolute stud. He was the best defenseman at the tournament. He made the All-Star team at the tournament as well. He had the most points for all defensemen in that tournament, all as an 18-year-old. And so, back in 2018-19-ish, we saw a lot of Canadiens fans get super hyped up for Romanov, and we had analysts like Craig Button going out there and saying that this guy had a top 2 ceiling. He had minute-munching potential, offensive potential, defensive capabilities, and he was just a complete package of a defenseman that projected into the long-term future. Give it a few more years, and Romanov plays another season with CSKA Moscow. He has 7 points in 43 games. He eventually makes the NHL's Montreal Canadiens full-time, has 6 points in 54 games played in the shortened 56-game campaign. He played 4 games in the playoffs when the Canadiens went to the finals, and a lot of Canadiens fans were kind of saying, okay, this is amazing. Romanov scored a super important goal. Romanov is making some great big hits. This is a guy that we have on our team, and we like the development path that he's going down. Now, this recent season, he actually did produce a little bit more. He had 13 points, 3 goals, 10 assists in 79 games played, 53 penalty minutes and a -9. And with all things considered, Romanov wasn't bad this year. There are a lot of players on the Canadiens that you can say had poor seasons in 2021, 2022. Romanov wasn't one of those that I felt like necessarily stood out as a good player per se, but in my mind, I didn't really see Romanov as too much of a game changer comparative to what Canadiens fans thought he would be when they were watching him at the World Juniors. Now, I get it, he's only 21, 22 years old, so obviously there's room to grow here, but this was a player that at the end of the day, his biggest strengths came in his own zone. He made a lot of very big body checks, and that was definitely fun to see. Romanov's physicality in general became probably the most marketable part of his game. But when it came to the projectability of Romanov at the NHL level, he still was a very big work in progress when it came to his offensive zone capabilities and rounding out everything outside of the defensive zone. However, that doesn't change the fact that Romanov was indeed still a fan favorite. People did remember what it was that he did at the World Juniors, and people still wanted to believe that there was an offensive capable defenseman that was lying dormant in this player and his profile. It's just now, with the Montreal Canadiens, that future is no longer going to be visited as he has been traded over to the Islanders. Now, why would the Canadiens trade away Romanov for what is essentially Kirby Dach? It's Romanov and a few other draft picks for Kirby Dach. That's a video for another day. I want to go over the entire philosophy of getting Dach and what that means for the rest of the roster and the implications, etc. But when we're focusing on Romanov himself, the Montreal Canadiens have done a really good job at bolstering their left-handed defenseman core, and that's been something that I've been noticing towards the end of the Bergevin years even. Not only was it Alexander Romanov that the Montreal Canadiens took in their earlier picks, you also had yourselves other defensemen like Jordan Harris, for example, taken in that same draft. You had guys going up into future years like Mattias Norlinder, absolute stud. Jaden Struble is a Northeastern University Husky alongside of Jordan Harris. That actually looks to be pretty good too. Gianni Fairbrother, Jacob Laguerriere, these are two shutdown players that you have at your disposal. In 2020, you have yourselves Caden Gould, of course. Caden Cooley is a left-handed defenseman that'll probably be making the team soon, so there indeed is another defenseman to take a look at. And then last year, you have William Trudeau playing for the Charlottetown Islanders that really took a big step up in 2021, 2022. And then, of course, this year, I mean, look, you can't go wrong with Lane Hudson. Actually, you might be able to. It depends on how well he develops. But either way, Lane Hudson was there. You have Adam Engstrom, who was there too. The Montreal Canadiens have a lot of left-handed defenseman depth when it comes to their prospect system. And I get it, Romanov isn't a prospect anymore, but when you consider the future, you consider how many picks and players the Canadiens had in their pipeline that could potentially become mainstay left-handed defensemen on the team, it's easy to envision a world where Romanov is not included in that picture. It's not that he's not valuable, it's just if you don't have Romanov, you could replace him with a Cooley. Somebody who also has a physical edge, who plays very well in his own zone, is a little bit bigger than Romanov, and who could also score a boatload of points as well. Now, I don't want to make it seem like I'm going Cooley versus Romanov here. One was a top pick in the first round, the other was a second-round sleeper, but it's just circumstantially I could understand the Canadiens deciding to let go of Romanov, especially in a trade where you send him and the 98th overall pick to the Islanders for a draft pick that was 13th overall. Like, Romanov has value, that's for sure, but I didn't think that him and a fourth would be enough to get a top 15 pick at the NHL Entry Draft, man. The Islanders went all debating on Vancouver and the JT Miller stuff to send that 13th overall pick to Montreal and allow Montreal to get that Kirby Dach instead. So, yeah, it's kind of funny to see how everything works out. And by the way, we're still going to be talking about JT Miller and the Islanders later in today's show. So, Islanders fans, there you go. You're getting yourselves 2 videos today. How great does it feel to be a part of the channel over here? But at the end of the day, cheer this guy on. Alexander Romanov is going to be a fan favorite. You're going to love seeing the way he hits. You're going to love seeing the defensive presence of mind that he has. One can only hope that his offense will start to blossom as he progresses up to levels of play. I do think he has top 2 potential when you talk about just purely minutes played. I don't think Romanov is ever going to break, let's say, 30, 40 points in a season, but if he could play 20, 22, 23, 24 minutes a night, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more easier to stomach when you acknowledge that you traded away the 13th overall pick to get this guy. I know you have a 4th that you also acquired, but come on, it's a 4th round pick. No disrespect to the player taken there, Isaiah George, but a 4th round pick is a 4th round pick. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Why did the Montreal Canadiens decide that Romanov was the piece to trade away for? What do you think about the actual trade itself? The fact that Romanov and a 4th was enough to fetch 13th overall? If you're an Islanders fan, how do you feel about this? I hope you enjoyed this video. and bye.